floors, and the beatings went on nearly every day. And they used to go in the bathroom and they used to wash you in the bath, and they would touch you in the bath and do things to you in the bathroom. And we had a thing called carbolic soap. The carbolic soap was like a red acidy type of soap that they used to use to wash the floors. And it was acid that used to rub the floors, and it was red and smelling. And Liver Brothers, I went and done something on it in my filming. And this carbolic soap was an acid, and you can still buy it on Amazon. Carbolic soap still freely available to this very, very day. And the floor scrubbing brushes, so you'd like women used to scrub the doorsteps and then paint them red or whatever the case might be. They used to scrub the floors with these. They'd wash your mouth out. They'd say to you, if you don't behave, I'll wash your mouth out in soap. But they used to do it anyway. They used to stick the soap in your mouth, and it used to burn your skin and eyes. And then they used to use this scrubbing brush on your body and scrape all your skin. And then they used to put this carbolic soap into your back and everything, and it used to burn you. And you was left red raw with these burn marks there. Then this went on every time you had a bath. They'd put you in a bath and they'd punish you. I don't know what they was trying to do to you. It was almost like you do as you're told. You know, this is an institution at its worst moment. And then you went down, the kitchen was on the right-hand side, and you had big gas cookers and a Coke boiler which did hardly anything. Okay, it heated the water up, but you ran a bath halfway through and it would run cold. So 9 times out of 10, always getting cold baths. And then you went up the stairs, and the first dormitory was a boys' dormitory. So you'd probably have 4 bunk beds and then single beds. And my bed was a single bed underneath a window, which I could look up the avenue. And I remember seeing Jimmy Savile's Sunshine coaches coming in to Beach Home and taking children away while I was in that cottage in Laburnum. And then, because at night in the dormitories when you were sleeping, and then you went down the other end, you had a bathroom upstairs, but the staff used that. You weren't allowed to use that as kids. You had to use the downstairs ones. And they were old, open cast iron baths, and they stood out on the floor and it was open. And we tried to stop them from coming in by using a toothbrush to put in the coach lock to try and stop them from coming in. But they'd come round and open the window up, and they'd get you through the window and say, you get that door open now. If you don't, you'll get a beating. And you knew what you were going to get, and you was going to be punished anyway. You were trying to stop the punishment from the first place because you knew it was going to get punished and beaten and abused. So you used this toothbrush to try and lock the door, but it didn't work because they still got to you. It doesn't matter. You had to come out sometime, so you would have got beaten. And these beatings went on nearly every single day. And Audrey Wilson was one of my abusers as well. This thick-set Welsh woman, Audrey Wilson. She was a large woman. Where the boys' dormitory was, there was a door opposite where her room was, her little bedroom was. And she'd come out there with this kind of like see-through nightie on, and she'd stand in the doorway, and she literally took the whole of the frame of the doorway up by standing there, and she'd holler at you, shut up and all that if you were speaking in bed and that, like, shut up and get to sleep and all that. And sometimes she'd come over and give you a whack to shut you up and punish me if you didn't. And one night, I remember in Laburnum, when I was in Laburnum, that the beech trees that lined Beach Home all the way down the avenues, these street lights that used to, there was like canopies of beech trees, and the lights would almost make a dancing pattern on the ceilings in the dormitories. So you through the light you could see the leaves dancing on the ceiling, if that makes sense. You know, it was like a dancing pattern through the light of the street, through the trees, the canopy of the trees. It was projected onto the dormitory ceilings, and you're lying there as a child looking up at these things. And I remember one night, and Audrey Wilson often came into our dormitory. Some kids were taken from the dormitory and taken somewhere else. I don't know where they took them, and the kids knew these saying. And one day I'm there, and these shadows are broken by a huge, huge shadow leaning over me in the dormitory. And it's all Audrey Wilson. It's leaning over my bed, and she's pulling the covers back, and she's touching me down below, and she's trying to. It felt like she was trying to tickle me. I was about 7 years of age, 7 or 8 years of age, and she's trying to tickle my little penis, and what she's getting from touching a boy so young that, you know, couldn't defend herself. And I was rigid, and I didn't know what to do, and I just, you know, I'm looking up, and all I can see is this black shadow of this woman leaning over me, and she was quite, because sometimes she'd grab you in her arms and pull you towards her or take you in her room as well. And she had very, very bad hygiene and she smelled horrible. And the smell was really, really disgusting. She smelled, and that's lingered with you all the time. It's hard for me to turn around and tell you what somebody smells like when you're being abused.
And I'd assume as well that would affect, that would inhibit your ability to form a relationship from the sex abuse.
Absolutely hated them. I wouldn't do anything they told me to do. I was, you know, I was naughty. I was always getting beaten because I wouldn't do as I was told. I didn't agree with them. And then what happened was, after she abused me in a dormitory, she left me, and I curled into this little ball, into the corner. I wedged myself into like this little ball, and I'm sat there like this in the corner, petrified, waiting for morning light, waiting for the morning just to come to get me out of this situation that I'm in. And I pissed the bed. I was so frightened I wet the bed. And she came at 7 o'clock in the morning and found that I'd wet the bed. And she was beating me. She said, "You dirty little boy, you naughty little boy," and slapping me. Oh, this is Audrey Wilson, slapping me all around the place. And she said, "Get your sheets now." And she told me to take the sheets off the bed. And she frog marched me down the stairs and took me into the bathroom and ran the cold bath, just the cold bath, not a hot bath, cold bath. She told me to wash my sheets and put them in the bath. And then she told me while my sheets were in the bath to get in the bath with the sheets as well and to wash myself. So I'm washing myself in the urinated sheets anyway that she's told me to wash. And she's beating me naked, slapping me on the backside, slapping the back, hitting me all over the place, really, really giving me a really, really good hiding. And these beatings went on all the time, and the bathrooms themselves were like torture chambers. He was taken in there, he was abused, you know, sexually, physically, mentally. The psychological damage they were doing was unbelievable. And I must have been in Laburnum for about 2-3 years, maybe 4, I'm not too sure. They took me from Laburnum to a house 2 doors down called Larch. We were classed as troubled children because we would resent what they were doing to us and try and fight back. In the process, when I was in Laburnum, I ran away about 3 times to try and get away. And it was such a far walk, and I remember walking across Bansted Downs, sorry, and it was so dark, and I come back in the pouring rain. I had a thing about the bathroom, is when I did eventually come back off of one of them running away, they said to me, when I went there, one of the superintendents was at the house with the parent, and the police had been called and so on and so forth. And I went in, and we weren't allowed to go in the front door. We always had to use the back door. We was never, ever allowed to go in the front door. Children do not use the front door. You have to use the back door. You have to go in the back door and go out the back door into the toilets to use the toilets outside. And I went back in, and the first thing and I was dripping wet from absolutely getting drowned from the pouring rain. And I had to walk across Bansted Downs in the dark, and I was absolutely petrified that somebody would get me, and I'd probably be taken, or I'd be killed or whatever, or something like that. And then eventually I got back in the pitch black, and I was wet through, and they told me to take all my clothes off and get a bath. I got a bath, and that was one of the nicest times. They was nice to me when I was like that. They made me a hot drink and that, and then said, "Right, you better get to bed now." But as soon as that went by, the punishments and everything started again. So you was beaten and abused thereafter. Now, that's what forced you to run away, and you kept on running away. I ran away about 3 times in Beecher because I couldn't stand the beatings and the abuse. I went to Bansted police station and told them about my abuse, and turned around and said I'm being beaten and touched in the bathrooms and in the dormitories and stuff like that by these staff. And they took me straight back to Beecham in a Black Mariah. And I had to go before the superintendent, was called Geoffrey Banner. And Geoffrey Banner was the superintendent of Beecham, and he had a name after him. And he was very abusive. He used to abuse all the children, a horrific abuser. He used to put the children over the desks, pull their knickers down, the girls especially, just in puberty, and smack their asses. Basically, he was just being a pervert and doing what he was doing to the girls. Some girls won't talk about what happened to him. With me, when he went into he showed me in the corner of his office was a cane, and he said, "Little boys like you get the cane and get sent away." And he got hold of me. He said, "Sit here, boy," and he was sitting me on his leg, and he's bouncing his leg up and down, and working himself off on this little boy sitting on his lap. And I knew something was happening because it was a different feeling. You know, there was something different going on it's very, very difficult to try and explain exactly what was happening. But I think, you know, he was getting an erection on, and he was getting worked off on just that rubbing against this boy. And then they put me into a cottage called Larch. And we were called naughty children. So children that were played up. There was a couple of others that went from Laburnum that they couldn't handle, they said. And this guy was called Ian McLaren, another one of my abusers. And by this time, I was, you know, going to the primary school. I was like that. And this is a trip when we was in the primary school, and we was all dressed in this brown uniform. It was a brown. I think if you can see from one of the shirts, I'll show you another picture in a minute. We had these yellow and brown ties on, brown jumpers. It was a horrible uniform. It was like brown, a shitty brown. And all these kids, you can see, this was a trip they took us on from the primary school to Dieppe one day. And but this guy is in this picture. This is Mr. Whiteman. Mr. Whiteman was a horrific abuser in Beechholm, and he used to abuse the children. Went to Shirley Oaks and went on to abuse in Shirley Oaks. I don't know if he ever got convicted. There is, I think, something in there on Whiteman. In I think you can look it up. But he would kind of like walk around the playground chasing you, sort of like, you know, he could walk and you could run, and he'd catch up with you in the end and trap you. And then because you only had these little shorts on, which you were in, these little shorts that you had on, you only had these shorts on, you possessed nothing. You didn't even possess a hanky. There was nothing in your pockets. You didn't own no money. You didn't have no anything. Mobile phones. You didn't have no anything. So he'd go, what you got in your pocket, boy? And he'd search through your pockets and feel around your pockets. And it felt like ages that all he was doing was feeling you up and touching a little boy up. And he was doing this in broad daylight in a playground, in a school playground, in front of all the other kids. But all the other kids, and people were turning a blind eye to it. Nobody was saying anything. My teacher in my class, Mr. Amargates, used to hit me over the knuckles with a ruler, come up and slap me round the back of the head. The thing they used to do is keep slapping you around the ear and around the back of the head. Didn't teach me anything. And when they say the blackball rubber being thrown at you, I used to have that thrown at me. I never learned anything. My education was really, really poor. I couldn't read or write at 15. And in Larch, when I went to Larch Cottage, unless you want to come in, do you want to carry on?
No, you got it.
I went into Larch Cottage, which was a couple of doors down. It was in the bottom end of the avenue. And I say there was 24 houses. And my two sisters and my brother were in other cottages, but they wouldn't put us together as a family unit. So we all stayed in separate cottages. My two sisters were in different cottages.
And they were all abused in all of these cottages,
yes,
correct?
Yeah. All abused. Physically, psychologically and mentally abused. Sexually and physically. And I'll come to the abuse of my sister Margie in a minute, and Anne. And
Can I ask quickly then? So you mentioned the police and the fact that you ran to them, you told them what happened, and they took you back to the Beechholm, right? Yeah. So I've read a little bit of your book, which isn't released yet, but you started writing a book, and in there you talk about how the police in those days were much stricter than they are now, and we do see that a lot in pop culture, where they talk about the fact that police were a lot tougher and rougher back in those days. So how come, if the police were truly like that, did they not take your allegations seriously, and they just, was it a power thing? Were they involved?
I think a little boy's word was never taken then. A child's word was, a consenting adult was believed more than a child. That child might be lying, might be making it up, and authority deemed it necessary that you was a little boy, and what they used to say to you in Beechholm was that little boys are seen and not heard.
We hope you enjoyed this latest video from Vox Populi. To watch the full video for free, please check out our website at voxpopulimedia.com. Thank you for your support.